Hello YouTube, this is my review on the Steel Will Gekko 1530 in N690Co steel. This is stainless steel. This knife has been given to me by Knives and Tools to do a review for them, and although this is not really my type of knife, I must say I'm really pleased with it. I will give you some of the specifications. The blade length is 13.2 centimeters. Which can tell you that this is a all-round knife. With this length you can do many tasks like feather sticking, but also a little bit batoning. The total length is 25.5 centimeters. It has quite a big handle, 12.7 centimeters, which fits my hand perfectly and even leaves some room for bigger hands. And I don't really have small hands, so the blade is quite thin. It is 4 millimeters, but I think it's a bit thinner on the top because the spine of the blade is rounded. The steel, as I told you, is Böhler N690Co, which is hardened to a hardness of about 85 to 60 HRC. It comes with a high flat grind. With a secondary bevel, which I took off, of course. The first thing I did is resharpen this blade, and I gave this blade a secondary convex. I made the secondary bevel convex because of the high flat. This is kind of a thin blade, so I gave it a secondary convex to keep the edge sturdy. And I have taken this knife on the trip to Norway to test it, and I'm really pleased with it. The blade comes with a nice leather sheath, handcrafted in Italy. It is kind of flexible. This is really good leather. It's quite thick, not too thick. It's very light also. And what I like about this sheath is you can carry it horizontal and vertical. That's really nice. And I really like the design. It feels really sturdy. A very good sheath. Another handy thing is that this sheath comes only partially molded, so it is not left or right sided. You can mold it just by putting the knife in. The leather will form around the handle for left and right, so that is really nice, a really nice feature. Overall, I really like the sheath. Only downside of the sheath is that it doesn't come with a fire steel loop. It's not necessary for all people, but I would have liked to see it come with a fire steel loop. But the knife itself, they put a lot of work in designing this knife. The handle is made of canvas micarta, which is still rough. It's not polished, so it gives a nice sturdy grip on the handle. It also feels quite ergonomic, not like Bog River, but it is really ergonomic. It feels good to my hand. Comes with a glass breaker and a lanyard hole. As you can see, all the steel of the tang is rounded, and this also goes through in the blade. It comes with some jimpings. Overall, I'm not really a fan of jimping, but these jimpings really don't bother me. I don't use them either, but they don't bother me. Yeah, it comes with a spear point. And like I said, the top of the blade is rounded off, which is nice for the design, but less practical for a survival situation where you need a fire steel or scrape the skin of an animal. But this is not really a hunter's knife. This is an all-purpose knife. You could use this for survival, bushcraft, and a little bit of hunting. Comes with a spear point, so you can really pierce through tough skin. But this is more of an all-round survival knife, I believe. Or an all-round camp knife, more to say. An all-round camp knife. I've already tested this knife with great success, and I'm going to show you some of the tests I did with this knife. Well, first of all, this high flat grind really makes this knife crazy sharp. No problem. You can also hear it from the sound how sharp this knife is. It's a very sharp knife. Also, thanks to this high flat grind, this knife makes a perfect feather sticker. You can see how fine these feathers are. You really need a sharp blade to create fine feathers, which will quickly light when using fire steel. The blade length of this knife makes it an excellent all-round knife. Although it's quite thin, it's 4 millimeters thick, it can easily baton the most wood you throw at it, so that's really nice. For me that's kind of important, because when you're camping or hiking you don't always carry an axe with you, and the knife has to do the thing for you. So let's see what this knife can do with batoning. And I'm not going easy on it. I'm going to use these thick logs as well as some thinner. So let's see what this knife can do. This log is almost as big as this knife is. Now this is oak, as you can see only the tip is sticking out, so this is really the maximum, more than a fist thick. No problem. These full tang blades these full tang blades are made to withstand a lot of force, so you can really throw a lot at them. Excellent. Easy. Now for some thinner logs. No problem. And you will use this knife for batoning wood this size mostly, because those bigger logs, you won't gather them around the camp. You will just stick with these kind of logs. Don't even bother with the bigger ones. This one has a knot in it, So we'll see how that goes. No problem. No problem. Now let's find a log with a big knot. This log got a nasty knot, so we're gonna try to baton this. No problem. This thin blade doesn't really split the wood, but because it's thin, it's easy to get through, even through the knots. So don't underestimate this knife. It can get most jobs done, and because of the length, it's an excellent baton knife. And this knife is kind of light, so I don't think this is a great chopper. Because of the weight, I didn't add a lanyard yet, but you will not use this knife for chopping, you will baton it through wood. But we're gonna check it anyways. And this is really hard wood, you can tell from the sound. This has been laying around here, drying. This is really hard. This is not spruce. I think this is junipers or something like that. So this is really hard. And does quite well, as you can see. But the way you're going to use this knife when cutting down logs or trees, you want to use the baton. You want to use the baton like this. Just hammer the knife in. And this is, of course, nice knife abuse, but this is where you will need your knife for when you're in a survival situation, so it needs to be tested. And a good knife can handle this easily. And because of the thin blade, this knife really gets into the wood quite deep with every blow, so that is a really nice feature. I'm gonna do a quick test with the point, if it holds up, if the heat treat is right, which I think it is. This is not really hardwood, it is not steel. I'm not gonna destroy this knife, this is not the destruction test. So I really want to keep this knife because I like it. So yeah. There's quite some piercing power. And this you would do with the point when you're making a friction fire. You kind of slice out a little round hole for the spindle to fit in. No problems for this knife. The point is still sharp, not bended. And after all these tests, the blade still 100% straight, which we can expect of a knife hardened to this level. This knife is 85 to 60 HRC. So yeah, I don't know exactly if this will chip or bend, because I haven't had any chips or rolls on it yet, so can't say. Now let's see if this knife can still do a nice feather stick after all this. Well, that's quite a fine feather stick. Let's abuse it some more. This knife is an excellent cutter, also because of the thin geometry. You see how deep that went with one push? One hard push, of course, but very deep. This is really abusing the edge. Testing for that edge retention you want on your blade. Oak wood. No problem. So let's see how well the edge held itself. Alright, I'm going to clean the edge off a little bit with this piece of cloth to get rid of the particles and moist from the wood. And we're going to test how well it cuts paper. There's a slight burr or micro edge problem on the belly, but this knife is still crazy sharp, and I'm going to show you if it shaves. This knife is still shaving, and you have to keep in mind that this is a very thin bevel because of the high flat grind. And I had some previous knives in the same steel, N690Co, and I wasn't not really that enthusiastic about them. I tested them and they were not bad, but they weren't as great as I want my steels to be. They didn't compare to CPM 3V and stuff, not even VG10. But Steel Will really did a nice heat treat on this blade, and it's by far the best N690Co that I've ever tested. And I think this surpasses VG10, and I'm quite happy with this knife. Although this knife is not really my kind of knife, not really my style, because of the fancy looks. I prefer simple looks of knives like Bog River and stuff, Volknieven. But yeah, it is a nice knife. It has a nice design. Probably a lot of people like this design. I don't really care about it. What I do like about this design is the lanyard hole. It's not fitted into the micarta, but it's only in the glass breaker, and that keeps the lanyard from irritating your hand. A lot of knives have the lanyard hole positioned here, and if the lanyard hole, or if you put a lanyard in there, it can irritate your hand if you hold it like this. But this will never irritate your hand, so that's quite nice. Of course, it's a modification I can do myself, but I would have liked to have seen this knife with a flat back, a flat spine, so that it could scrape a fire steel. But yeah, overall, I'm very happy with this knife, and I'm very happy that it was gifted to me for this review purpose. Yes, I can recommend this knife. I think this knife will be suited most for campers, hikers. It's not too heavy. I think it's about 210 grams. It has a nice sheath. It's not a survival knife. It can be a sort of bushcraft knife. It's not really a hunter's knife, although it has a spear point, so it can pierce through skin easily. But I think this is an all-purpose camp knife, so you can use it around the camp, in the camp. You can do some hunting jobs with it, you can do some carving jobs with it, you can do some survival jobs with it. But the main purpose of this knife is around the camp tasks, like splitting wood, making fire sticks, feather sticks, sorry, cutting rope, stuff like that. And this is where this knife excels as an all-rounder. The handle, it feels comfortable to my hand. This rounded back, this bended back, as you can see, can irritate slightly to the palm of your hand when batoning, but if you're just batoning some piece of wood like I just did, you don't even notice it. So overall, a great blade. And if you ask me, the money you pay for this knife, even for the N690Co steel, which is not a premium or super steel, it is worth it. I think, in my opinion, it is worth it. You not only get a nice, good performing knife, but you also get a good looker, a unique knife. Quite unique. I had this knife with me on my 3-week trip to Norway, and it served me quite well, I have to say. And as I told you guys, this knife is an all-round knife, and that is what I use it for. I had it on my belt and in my backpack every time I went on a hike, and it really came in handy. I did not rely on this knife for fire making and stuff, but on my regular hikes this was an excellent knife, and it absolutely didn't get dull. I had a strop with me, stropped it every evening, and was good to go. I never had chips, I never had rolls, so I'm really impressed with this knife. And I used it every day, so it kind of formed a bond with this knife. Even if it is a knife that really isn't quite my style, I really learned to enjoy this knife. Thank you for watching.